If you know that tune or recognize it, I was a little worried about copyright infringement. It's I'm Like a Bird. And I was hearing that on the radio, and I wondered to myself, as I'm prone to doing, I thought, does Nelly Furtado have Venus conjunct Uranus? Because if there were an anthem for this aspect, I think that would be it. And sure enough, I looked it up, and she does have that aspect, Venus conjunct Uranus, in her natal chart in the sign of Scorpio. Now for fun, if you're not familiar with the song, I thought I would just share some of the lyrics. You're beautiful, that's for sure. You'll never, ever fade. You're lovely, but it's not for sure that I won't ever change. And though my love is pure, ooh, and though my love is true, ooh, I'm like a bird, I'll only fly away. I don't know where my soul is, I don't know where my home is. And baby, all I need for you to know is I'm like a bird, I'll only fly away. I don't know where my soul is, I don't know where my home is. Your faith in me brings me to tears, even after all these years, and it pains me so much to let you know that you don't know me that well. And though my love is rare, though my love is true, you get the idea. It's not that I want to say goodbye, it's just that every time you try to tell me that you love me, each and every single day, I know I'm gonna have to eventually give you away. Now, interesting, she was definitely channeling perhaps this aspect when she wrote the song. When I do these videos, keep in mind, I might be giving a perhaps exaggerated insight into them for learning, but keep in mind that we're not looking at the house or the sign that the conjunction is happening or other aspects that Venus or Uranus are receiving. So that definitely flavors how this manifests and the kind of exaggeration of this aspect. But we have the planet Venus of love, how we attract, what we are attracted to, the receptive principle in an individual, the beauty nature, the pleasures of life, clothing, sweets, riches, and jewelry, combined with this maverick of Uranus that seeks that which is maybe ahead of its time, outside the norm, or erratic and eccentric. And it's a planet that requires a great deal of freedom, impulsivity, and a long leash. So I always say people with this placement, they require a long leash when it comes to love, but it's also a very non-judgmental and all kind of inclusive love nature that can really empathize with a lot of different types of people, have a wide range of friendships with people of all different backgrounds and walks of life, and really, have that kind of I don't want to say free love, but there's a liberated nature to love. Live and let love. Live and let live. So I'm going to go through some examples of people with this beyond Miss Furtado, but keep in mind again, we don't know these people. I'm looking up their birth times on the internet. We have this information. It's kind of wild that we do, but I am doing some citizen science, but it's not exhaustive. So I do my best to kind of share the patterns I see and interpret from a pretty open-minded place and not being too judgmental, because we don't have always the full picture of these people's lives. Now, this is kind of a placement that you see in individuals who have potentially multiple marriages or kind of a laundry list of relationships or marriages, because when we bring Uranus with Venus, there are some challenges, I think, not to overlook. And one can be that because Uranus is a little bit of a detached energy, it's a very sensitized energy, and it's somewhat sporadic. I would say that when people have this, one thing to investigate or reflect on is your attachment style. Do you feel that you are more avoidant? Because I would say this contact can breed that tendency, like a more avoidant or aloof tendency, almost stemming from like a self-protective way. And because it's so independent, something to watch out for is, are you pushing away opportunities for connection or intimacy? That would be something from my psychology pedestal that I would ask. But we also see this represent, sometimes the way the person styles themselves. They might dress in a more eccentric way or have a very kind of unusual style of adorning themselves or beautifying themselves. And it can definitely be someone that seeks novelty among the pleasures of life. So I would say, especially if Jupiter is involved, watch out for overindulgence, right? Because Uranus might be seeking the next flavor of whatever, the candy. And that could be potentially, if not kept in check, something that could have, not the best consequences. It's something more so in the opposition that I think that avoidance can be more problematic when it comes to relationship, because in the opposition, we're going to have the planets in conflict more so than the conjunction, though the conjunction is also considered a hard aspect. So let's get into some examples without further ado. So some off the top of my head right now, Tom Cruise has this placement. He's known to have had sundry marriages and relationships, but early in his career, he actually was interviewed, and it was like before one of his first marriages, he said, I can't imagine getting married. And he even said that he was thinking about becoming a monk. So that's kind of the other extreme you can get with this. Like would be maybe the extreme avoidance of intimacy, because obviously if you're a monk, you're living this ascetic lifestyle where you renounce worldly pleasures. So that could be a manifestation. As we know in his biography, that didn't happen. And he kind of just continued with a string of marriages. But it's interesting to know, right? Jake Gyllenhaal, individual with this placement, never settled down, so to speak, has had committed relationships, but has never, had that kind of traditional setup, even though you would think, successful, good looking, probably stable guy. No. Again, these people are in Hollywood, so it's hard to say. It's very normal in Hollywood to have a lot of relationships in the public eye, and it's a challenging dating atmosphere, I would imagine. But, there are celebrities that just have one marriage and that's it. And there's even people with this aspect, like Rachel Ray, who have one marriage, kids, that's it. But I'm willing to bet that other ways these energies kind of manifest in, her style of relating, or how much freedom she might need in her partnership. Steve McQueen, another one with this. He had 3 marriages. He had this, so did Luke Wilson. Luke Wilson has this. He's still alive. One of my celebrity crushes, actually, 2 of my celebrity crushes have this aspect. And with Luke Wilson, I was kind of, I don't think about celebrities' lives that much, but I was like, I saw he had this aspect. I'm like, has he ever gotten married? Has he ever had children? No, he hasn't. He's kind of a rogue, and he even said in some interviews, I would like to be a father. I love my niece and nephew, but I am 47 and I don't know, it just hasn't happened. So it doesn't mean that you're gonna be a perennial bachelor or bachelorette. there are people in long-term committed relationships with this, like I said, but there's something a little tweaked about it. Like in the case of some women who have this, Christina Aguilera and Rachel McAdams, they're both have gone on the record to say, one of them, Christina Aguilera, had like a 7 or 8 year engagement, and she had said, I don't need a certificate to prove my love. You know, we can just be together and be committed and not need it to be formalized. Rachel McAdams holds a similar philosophy. She even has children with her boyfriend, and they've been together for years and years. There's no need to bring it to that level. And one could psychoanalyze and think, is there like a fear there? And I would say it can be the case with this placement where they don't want to be trapped. So in a smart way, maybe they just say, hey, let's not formalize it, to psychologically make it feel more freeing, even if it is just the same thing as being married. So I find that really fascinating. Some other icons, so Jane Mansfield had this placement. She was very notorious for her, the way she shared her Venus energy, her feminine energy with the world, and got some pushback on it actually. Towards the latter end of her career, she was kind of scandalized because she showed herself fully nude in a movie, and at that time frame it was seen as pretty no. So she was a little bit rebellious, and how she's like sharing the Venusian energy. Miley Cyrus has this placement a lot. It pushes the edge a little bit, and that can make some people uncomfortable. But with certain charts, like in relationship, this can work really well because it really depends on how the pairing is, because they might be with another pretty free-spirited person and it works pretty well. Jane Mansfield had an interesting thing that helps me find a pattern as well. So she was actually part of Satanism at one point and affiliated with that religious or organization. And she, it was kind of like, it was made a big deal of. Tom Cruise, as we know, Scientology, there's a lot of people who are attracted to kind of unusual groups and organizations with this, or unusual kind of religions who have this. Another example was Cat Stevens. I think it's not even that he was in an unusual religion, but just there's something about like maybe wanting to belong to a larger group because the relating nature is so intimately tied to groups. So it could be a common thing to see in people who are part of like a niche type of group practice, religion. That's another way that I feel like this can express. Alrighty, so let me just check my notes here. Was there anything else I needed to touch on? Okay, one little last thing. So don't run. If you're looking at someone's chart, they have this aspect, you want to date them. I'm not saying run. Just take into consideration, right? Look at if Venus conjunct Uranus is in Capricorn or Taurus, like a fixed earth sign, it's going to express a lot differently. And then if it's in Sagittarius and like trining Jupiter, that, those two versions of this aspect are going to express wildly differently at sometimes. So don't be too quick to judge, like these people with this aspect aren't. That's one of the gifts I would say of this aspect is it's very open-minded. It's a non-judgmental aspect, and there is like a strong humanitarian bent to people with this. They care about doing something that kind of makes a difference in the world, and they are independent. They might need a longer leash. Doesn't mean they're promiscuous or freaks, not necessarily, but it is something to ask questions about or get clarity on if the person that with this maybe tends towards being a little more avoidant or might have some fears to look at. Like I said, Uranus sensitizes what it touches. So though it might seem aloof, it could actually be an incredibly sensitive way of relating. And so there could be a little bit of a guardedness going on here. I hope that it was helpful. I hope that you got some insight. If you have this aspect and have any thoughts that you want to share in your experience of it, comment below. I have other aspect videos as well. Thank you so much for tuning into this, and I hope it helped you learn something new about astrology.